What's that? You want to learn about the 70s? Well, if I got a presentation for you. Fiction was a major genre in the 70s, and in other stories, racism and the government were involved, such as in Roots, The Bluest Eyes, Jailbird, and All the President's Men. Near the end of the decade, horror genre started to grow, all because of Stephen King, with one of his best-selling books, The Shining, leading the way for the horror genre. Religion. But what about religion? Sure, there was Christianity, there was Judaism and Islam, and 60% of the population in the US in the 70s were Protestant. But what about the extremists, the cult leaders? You got Charles Manson, you got Jim Jones. Drink the Kool-Aid. He was the founder of the People's Temple, and he promised his followers utopia if they followed him. He even saw himself as Jesus Christ. Music! Anti-war songs went all the way through the 60s and into the 70s. This decade also brought upon the rise of disco, and rock started rolling. Pastimes. What do people do in the 70s? Besides doing drugs, going to war, and protesting war, what do they do outside of the home? They go bowling, they go roller skating. But what about in the home? They gather around the television and watch TV, and spend time with each other as a family. Television. What TV shows did people watch in the 70s? They watched The Incredible Hulk, they watched MASH, and they watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. But what else did TV do? It brought families together. It entertained them. But it also showed war, and it brought the war into the homes of the people. It led to anti-war advocates and protests. What's that? You want to know major events of the 70s? Well, in 1970, Nixon orders the invasion of Cambodia. Nobody liked that. Kent State Massacre caused because of this. And the Beatles broke up. 1972, Watergate. It's not very good for Nixon. 1974, Nixon resigns, and Gerald Ford pardons him. People didn't really like that either. In 1975, the Vietnam War ends. Technologies and inventions. What did we get out of the 70s? Well, in 1973, the first mobile phone was introduced. In 1974, we got the first Rubik's Cube. In 1975, the Altair 8000 computer was made by Bill Gates and Paul Allen. The following year, in 1976, Apple II was made. It was the first personal computer for Apple, and it was made by Steve Jobs. In 1978, the first test tube baby was born. That means they got egg and sperm from each individual, and they put it into the uterus, and the baby was crafted. In 1979, we got the first portable music player, the Sony Walkman, so you can listen to music on the go. Video games. What games came out in the 70s? In 1971, there was the Oregon Trail. 1972, there's Pong. In 1978, there were Space Invaders. And in 1979, there was Asteroids. Now this was the first decade in video game history. These games helped pave the way for more awesome video games, like Pac-Man, like Centipede, like Space Raiders, like Star Command, all the way up to the 21st century, where you get awesome games like Lego Star Wars. Now, my final topic, my most important topic. Movies. What about movies in the 70s? During that decade, the restrictions on movies had loosened, and heavier topics were introduced, such as Vietnam War. There's Star Wars! Apocalypse Now! The Godfather! Alien! The Exorcist! The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you! That's it. That's all about the 70s. Good night.